Welcome everyone to today's session. Thanks again for joining us. I know the people who've been here since 7 have been hearing me say this a bunch of times. But so today the session is on understanding network penetration testing, and it'll be by Mary Campbell. So I'll allow her to begin, but I'd like to let you know that if you have any questions or comments, please write them down in the chat. And towards the end of the session, you'll be able to unmute yourself or still write your questions in the chat if you're uncomfortable with speaking up. But yes, just giving you some tips and we can begin.
Thank you so much, Maria, for that. As she has mentioned, my name is Mary Watiri Campbell, and I am your speaker for today's session, which is on the battle for cybersecurity, understanding network penetration testing. So who am I? I have a brief introduction about myself here. I am a cybersecurity consultant at EITS. I'm also the founding author of the CyberCop Hub, which is a LinkedIn newsletter where I write and share pen testing content on a bi-weekly basis. I'm also a mentee at the Standard Chartered Women in Cybersecurity program. And I just like to point out that my mentor is also in today's session. Her name is Dresta Kuta. I'm also a CyberGirls alumna, graduated from the penetration testing learning path. And during my free time, I volunteer as a research associate at Connecting African Women in STEM, which is COSTEM. Besides that, I hold a bachelor's degree in business and information technology from Strathmore, class of 2020. I'm also certified in cybersecurity, and I've earned a couple of certifications from online training programs such as EC Council, Virtually Testing Foundation, and recently the CPITS data protection course. So with that, let's dive into today's session. Our objective is to understand what network pen testing is. We're also going to look at the different types of penetration testing, as well as the network penetration testing lifecycle, the different tools, attacks, and mitigation techniques that are used in network pen testing, as well as some legal and ethical issues. And last but not least, we'll have a brief demo session where we'll actually pen test a live system. So what is network penetration testing? In simple terms, this is the process of assessing the security of a computer network by simulating a cyber attack against it. And usually, network pen test can be done either internally by the organization's IT team or externally by a third-party security firm. So why is network pen testing important? The goal of a pen test is to identify the vulnerabilities and weaknesses that are in a network before the real attack actually occurs. And there are actually two subcategories of network penetration testing. It can either be internal or external. An internal testing is whereby we simulate the attacks as though they are coming in from the network. And an external pen test is whereby we emulate that the attacks are coming from outside of our network. Now we are actually going to take a look at the different types of pen testing. And we have three main ones. A pen test can either be a black box, white box, or a gray box. A black box pen testing is whereby the red team, which is the offensive security team or the pen testers, they have no knowledge on the network infrastructure, and they are actually meant to assess the organization's security posture from publicly available information to misconfigurations, and they even go to the extent of social engineering the employees in an organization just to determine its security posture. So usually a black box pen testing is the type of testing which simulates a real attack scenario, and it's actually pretty much comprehensive. Then we have a white box testing. This is whereby the complete digital infrastructure and the assets have been disclosed to the pen tester, and they're used by the organization to test specific areas. So basically, you as a pen tester or an ethical hacker already have the information on what you're meant to test, whether it's IP addresses and all of that. Last but not least, we have the gray box testing, which combines both aspects of black box and white box pen testing. And in this case, the tester usually has limited knowledge of the target system. And more often than not, it simulates attacks from both an insider and an outsider perspective. We're now going to look at the pen testing lifecycle. And in this case, these are the different steps that are followed in conducting a successful pen test. Usually these tests differ depending on the methodology that you're using. We have about 4 different pen testing methodologies, but let's dive into the most common steps. Here we have the first step, which is reconnaissance or information gathering. This is actually the most important step, and usually 90% of a pen test is mainly information gathering, because that will determine the success of your test. So in reconnaissance, the pen tester will gather information about the target, either passively or actively. And a tester can do this passively by, OSINT, just gathering publicly available information, or actively by scanning. We have different scanning tools, but we'll discuss that in a later slide. The next step is threat modeling and vulnerability assessment. Threat modeling is actually trying to establish an understanding of what threats will affect the organization infrastructure and actually build a profile of the different types of threats that the organization is prone to. Then when we talk about vulnerability assessment, this is the process of identifying and analyzing the vulnerabilities in a network. And we have also different tools that can be used to conduct a vulnerability assessment. So mainly here we're looking at vulnerabilities such as misconfigurations and weak security controls. The third step that we have is exploitation. And this is the identifying vulnerabilities and gaining unauthorized access. So this comes immediately after identifying the vulnerabilities. Then we have post-exploitation analysis. And this is actually gaining access to the system once you've exploited it. Yeah, gaining access and actually trying to escalate your privileges. We'll actually take a look at this during our demo. Then last but not least, we have the report writing. And this is also a very important aspect of pen testing, because you're trying to encapsulate whatever you've done and whatever you've discovered into a document that the C-suite level management can understand. And you also get to express and explain the impact of the vulnerabilities that you found. So that's it for the network penetration testing phase. And we're now going on to talk about the importance of a vulnerability assessment and pen test. But before we dive into this, I like to think about security as, for instance, your home, or rather your compound where you live. So assuming you have your own house somewhere, you would want to implement different security measures to make sure that you're keeping away from thieves and burglars. So for instance, if you built a house, you may want to put up a fence that's like the perimeter to keep off unwanted people. Then on top of that, you want to reinforce your wall. You may proceed to add stuff like an electric fence, not just a wall. Yeah, you put the electric fence, and also you may even go ahead to add like a security guard for more protection. And then you can go ahead to acquire CCTV cameras. Basically, you want to keep your home safe. And it's the same thing here. As an internet user, you want to keep your online presence safe from the different cyber criminals out there. So as an organization, conducting a vulnerability assessment and pen test is just one of those examples. And it's important because if you've secured your organization's network, in this case, the house represents your network, yeah? If you've protected it, you're going to be able to identify some vulnerabilities before hackers can actually exploit them. And this process is actually good as it provides you with a comprehensive analysis of your organization's security posture, including the weaknesses and potential security gaps that you can actually work on. Then besides that, as an organization, you're going to be complying with some of the regulations and standards that have been set. An example of this is like the PCI DSS standard. This stands for the Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard. So this standard actually requires that organizations that handle credit card information require a regular pen test. So this is to make sure that people's credit card details are safe and attackers are not able to gain access and, exploit whatever details that they come across. Another importance is cost savings. And a successful cyber attack will result in the loss of sensitive data. It can also result in financial losses as well as reputation damage as an organization. So once you address the vulnerabilities that you find before an attack, organizations are actually able to avoid some of these significant costs that are associated with the data breach. Then we have improved security, and this helps to prioritize and focus the efforts on addressing the most critical vulnerabilities. We also have continuous improvement. Since a pen test is not like a one-time thing, I mean, you're just not going to do a pen test today and do it 10 years later. No, it's actually pretty not realistic. So you need to constantly keep performing pen tests, because this will ensure that your organization's security measures are up to date and effective against the latest threats. Then we have brand trust and reputation. We realize that customers are more likely to trust organizations that take security seriously because they know that their information is confidential and it has not been tampered with in any case. So clients are more likely to do business with you if you take security very seriously as opposed to other companies that keep getting breaches each and every day. So moving on, we're going to take a look at some of the tools that we can use in a network pen test. I've just mentioned 5 here, but we actually have a lot of tools that can be used, and also depending on the type of test that you want to carry out. For instance, it could be like a web app pen test or an API pen test. So yeah, we have a lot of tools depending on the nature of pen test. So the first tool that I'm going to talk about is NetDiscover. NetDiscover is a network exploration tool that is used to discover hosts and services that are running on your network. And it sends ARP requests to the network, which allows it to map out the topology and identify the active host, their IP addresses and MAC addresses. Then we have Nmap. Nmap is a tool which is designed to scan networks. It identifies hosts and services running on this network. And it's also able to detect the open ports, operating system, and versions that are running on your network. We also have the Netcat. Netcat is a network utility tool which can be used to establish a TCP or a UDP connection. And it listens on TCP UDP ports and interacts with the network using a variety of the network protocols. Then we have Metasploit. Metasploit is an open source framework for developing, testing, and executing exploits against a target system or network. Then we have Wireshark. And Wireshark is a network protocol analyzer tool, which is used to capture and analyze network traffic in real time. And it allows the user to examine the data packets that are being sent over the network. So we are actually now going to take a look at some of the network level attacks that can happen on a network. And besides the 6 that I've listed here, we have other types of attacks like firewall misconfiguration attacks. We have IPS and IDS evasion attacks. We also have attacks targeted at the router, SSH attacks, unnecessary open ports. I mean, there are a lot of different attacks that can happen to a network. So let's begin. Packet sniffing attack. This type of attack is whereby a malicious actor uses a sniffer, which can either be a hardware or software, to steal sensitive information from the network, such as passwords, username, credit card numbers, and they use this sniffer to analyze unencrypted traffic that is passing through your network. Yeah, then we have a DDoS attack. which is distributed denial of service attack. And this is actually pretty common. And the main goal of a DDoS attack is to make the server or the network unavailable to its users by consuming resources or crashing it. So what happens is that a malicious actor attempts to disrupt the normal traffic of a network by overwhelming it with a flood of traffic from multiple sources. And usually these are called botnets, kind of like zombie computers on your network. Then we have session hijacking attacks. This is a type of attack where the malicious actor intercepts and takes control of an ongoing session between a user and a server or any other network system. And by doing this, they're able to gain access to sensitive information or perform any unauthorized actions on the user's behalf. A common technique that can be used is eavesdropping. Then we have the spoofing attack. This is a type of cyber attack where a malicious actor disguises their identity to gain access to a network or to carry out other malicious activity. For instance, we have IP address spoofing and DNS spoofing. So usually the attacker will manipulate the information to appear as though it's coming from a trusted source, and they trick the user to then divulge sensitive information. Then we have a man-in-the-middle attack. It's also called MITM. And this happens when an attacker is able to intercept the communication between two parties, for instance, between a user and a website. And they position themselves in the middle of the communication, allowing them to intercept, alter, or steal data that is being transmitted between two parties. And we have remote code execution attack. And this is where an attacker is able to execute arbitrary code or commands on a victim's computer or system by exploiting a vulnerability in their network or in their application. And usually RCE attacks, or rather remote code execution attacks, they can be devastating as they result in a total system compromise and data loss. So it's crucial to keep systems up to date with security patches and implement security measures to keep them safe. So we're going to look at some of the security measures that we can integrate. And here we have firewalls, intrusion detection systems, access controls, encryption, regular updates of patches, and security awareness training. So a firewall can either be software-based or hardware-based, and it's a device that filters incoming and outgoing traffic, monitors it, and blocks any unwanted traffic that is coming into your network. Then we have an IDS, and this is a security solution that monitors network traffic or system activities for suspicious behaviors or patterns that indicate a security breach. So usually an IDS can alert the security personnel when it detects anomalous activities. And we also have an intrusion prevention system, which is used to prevent some of these malicious activities happening on the network. Then we have access controls, and these are mechanisms that regulate who or what can access specific resources. Access controls can either be physical, technical, or administrative, and they're there to ensure that only authorized individuals have access to the sensitive information that is available on your network. Then we have encryption. And encryption is the process of transforming plain text into ciphertext by using a cryptographic algorithm and a key. So encryption is there to protect the confidentiality and the integrity of information by preventing unauthorized access or modification. Then we have regular updates, and we talked about this. So this is just making sure that you're constantly updating your systems. Then, most importantly, we have security awareness training. It's actually very important for you as an organization to educate your staff. And also it's important for you as a user to be informed about the various security risks and threats that you may encounter on the internet and how to avoid these risks. This is important as it can help your staff to protect themselves and the organization from various cyber attacks. So I'm briefly going to mention some of the legal and ethical issues in network pen testing and even pen testing in general. So it's important that before a pen test is conducted, you actually have proper authorization from the owner of the system or the network being tested. Unless you don't have any authorization, then whatever you're doing becomes very illegal. Also, penetration testing must be conducted in compliance with the applicable laws and regulations, such as the different data protection and privacy laws. And it's important that the scope and boundaries of testing be clearly defined and agreed upon in advance to avoid any misunderstandings or unexpected consequences. So usually, all of these points here are touched upon during pre-engagement. So pre-engagement is whereby you obtain the permission, you define the scope of work, you sign an NDA, and then you begin your pen test. So with that in mind, I'm actually now going to demonstrate how to pen test our system on the network. Yeah, and exploit some vulnerabilities. So, sorry. So I'm going to fire up my VirtualBox. Just give me a minute. Yeah, I have my VirtualBox here, and this is the vulnerable machine that we're going to be testing, Cryoprix 2. So I'm just going to turn it on. And we can see that it's actually running. So we're just going to give it a few minutes so that it can start up. And I don't want to make any new changes on this box. So I'm just going to ignore all these settings for me to reconfigure this machine. So our machine here is an old Linux box, and you can get it from Vulnab. Yeah, so here it says, welcome to Cryoprix Level 2, Penetration and Assessment Environment. Here we have some disclaimers and warnings, and it says Kyoptrix login. So naturally, we are meant to input our login credentials, but we don't have any information about this. So we are actually going to try to break into this system. So here on my local machine, I'm running on Kali Linux. There are two ways to approach this. So since this is running on my home network, the first thing that I want to do is that I'm going to scan my network to see whether we can identify the IP address of our vulnerable system. So to do this, we can use the NetDiscover tool that we talked about, or I can decide to just do a simple ARP scan, which is faster. So here, I'm going to run an ARP scan. And as you can see, it's quickly scanned my network. And here we have different IP addresses. This is not what we're looking for. What we want is this IP address over here, 192.168.100.150. So with this information, actually, I could also run another tab here to demonstrate how NetDiscover works. So here I'm just going to run sudo NetDiscover. And I'll specify it's my wireless network. Click enter, type in my password, and it's actually I'm going to let it run, but the output will be the same as what we have here. So since we have our IP address over here, we're now going to use our second tool, which is Nmap, to perform a scan. And then we're going to specify tag A. And this means that we want this Nmap scan to display the operating system details, as well as to detect the version of whatever machine this is. And we specify our IP address here. Yet again, it's the same one we discovered up here from our app scan. And I'm going to use TAC-V so that to increase the verbosity and just see the output as it's running. So our Nmap is doing the thing and just scanning. We're able to see that it's discovered some ports, but I'm just going to wait for it to finish the whole process. Yeah, now that it's done, this is the most important part that we want to look at, where it specifies the port, the state of the port, the service that is running on that port, and the version. So we can see that port 22 is open, and port 22 is open and the service is SSH. And here we can see the version of SSH that the system is running on. Then we can see port 80 is open, which is the HTTP port. We can also see port 111 is open, which is the RPC bind, as well as port 443, which is the HTTPS. And we have port 631, IPP, port 1.1, as well as 3306, which is the MySQL Also, we can see the operating system that our device is running on, and it says it's running on Linux 2.6. Yeah. So with this, there's some things that actually spiked my interest. And the most important one is these two ports, port 80 and port 3306, which is the MySQL database. So in a situation where the port 80 is open, it signifies that this is like a web application stuff. So we're actually going to type in our IP address on our browser. Just copy that. And paste it on our browser. And here we have a remote system administration login. So typically an admin page. Yet again, we don't have the login credentials of this. And we're going to try to input default credentials. We could start with some of the common credentials. We could start with like admin will be admin password 123 test. I mean, the options are endless, but let's try do admin, put admin 123. Okay, that doesn't work. You can try test. You can have like test me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That also doesn't work. We'll have like admin password with a capital P. Also, that doesn't work. But we realized that our port, this machine is running on MySQL because it has an open port. And with this, we can actually attempt to do an SQL injection where we try to inject some code to our database and bypass the authentication. There are very many payloads that you can attempt to do an SQL injection with, but in our case, we're going to use the default one, which is this, and then we'll inject that for our username field and just inject the same thing for our password here. And as you can see, we have bypassed authentication and we are in. Now, here we realize we are redirected to this page, index.php. And it says, welcome to the basic administrative web consoles. Ping a machine on the network. So basically, ping tests the connectivity between two devices on a network by sending ICMP echo request. So we could try to ping a different IP address that I have here. Let's try this just to see. Yeah, we can see. Okay, let's try a different IP address. Let's try, okay. Yeah, great. So we ping this IP address, the default IP address, and we were able to get a response. Basically, it shows that 3 packets were transmitted. And Okay, we're actually going to try to execute an RCE attack. We mentioned it earlier, which is the remote code execution attack. We're going to see whether we can send arbitrary commands from this server and receive a response. So since our system is Linux, we're just going to try Linux commands like ls for list. And it actually lists the files on the server. Here we have index.php and pingit.php. We can also try another command. We can try who am I. Here it tells us that our user is Apache. Just to confirm this, we can add another command, ID. And yeah, still the same thing. Our user ID is Apache. Yeah. So with this piece of information, we're going to find a way to run these commands from our local machine. And the best way to do this is through a reverse shell. So a reverse shell is a type of shell which a remote machine connects to a local machine shell instead of our local machine initiating the connection. So there are very many payloads that are available. You can actually go to your browser and you can search reverse shell payload. Yeah, there's this one available on GitHub. This is actually a pretty good cheat sheet. It has a lot of payloads depending on whatever pen test you're trying to do. So in our case, we need a bash reverse shell. So we can try this one. We can copy that. And then I used a semicolon just to separate the command. And then I paste this payload over here. And I'm gonna have to make some few changes here for the IP address as well as the port. So I'm going to use my IP address. Well, I already know it, but you can type the ifconfig to show you your IP address. This one, I'm just gonna copy mine. And then I'm going to replace that with mine. Also, this is the port. Gonna use a different port, 443. But before I run this, I'm going to use another tool called Netcat. I had mentioned it earlier as well. And I'm going to start it by running the command nc for Netcat. And then since I specified my port 443, this is the port where it's gonna listen on. Just gonna start that. And let me just put that to the side. So once I submit this, we should be able to get a shell on our local machine. As you can see, we have a shell here. So if I type ID, tells me Apache. So this is whatever we were getting on the browser before, but now I have it on my machine. Just run the same command, ls list the available files. I can also run another command, pwd, to print the working directory. And it's going to specify the path to the directory that we are on. But remember, our goal was for us to exploit this system and gain root access. So as you can see here, we are not root, we are Apache. And we need to escalate our privileges. So if you remember correctly from our Nmap scan, we did discover that we were running on Linux. Let me just close this. Yeah. Our operating system with, yeah, Linux kernel 2.6. Copy. So we're just going to go back to the internet and try to find an exploit for this. So I could just paste that and type exploit, see what we get. I can click on this first site, which is the exploit DB. So this site contains different exploits for different systems. So it says Linux kernel 2.630 to 2.630.1. So our system actually falls here and we can download this exploit. You can see it's downloading. Yeah, actually this is the one we needed. So we can download our exploit from the exploit database. And as you can see, we have downloaded it successfully. It's in our download directory. So if I just fire that up, yeah, we see that we have our exploit over here. Now, we need to put this file, this exploit file, in the same directory that our Netcat listener is on, because we need to find a way to move that file from our local machine to our server over here. So to do that, let me just, sorry. Yeah, so here, when I ls, you can see I have already copied the file, which is this. Yeah, 9542.c, and this is a C file exploit. So I'm going to type in, I'm going to start a simple Python server that we will use to move this file from our local machine to our other server. So to do this, I'm just going to do Python server. And then I'll specify our port, which is port 80. And then here we have it running. So that's good. Now, I'm going to type another command over here on this other terminal that will allow us to get this file. So the command that I'm going to use is, oh wait, sorry. I don't have this. I'm going to navigate into my temp directory. So that's a good place to work on. I'm just going to do cd tmp. This directory stores temporary files. We don't want this exploit to stay in the server too long. And then I'm going to run a command. I'm going to type wget. And then since it's running, our server is running on port 80, I'm going to type HTTP. And then I'm going to type in my IP address, which is 192. Yeah, so I've typed in my IP address, and then now I'm going to write the name of the file that I want on my server. As we mentioned, it's here, 9542. So if you watch closely, just put 9542.c, and then I hit enter. So if you notice, a lot has changed. We have something, we have a response here, and we also have something over here. So this means that our file is successfully uploaded. So when I run the ls command, we can see that we have our exploit inside our TMP directory. And we can actually go ahead to check the permissions by running ls-l. And here we notice that we only have read and write permissions for the user. Then the other groups and other users only have read permissions. So we need to change these permissions and make this C file executable. And to do this, I'm going to run another command, which is gcc. And I want this output to go to a file called alpha. And then I'm going to specify the file name, which is 9542.c. I hit enter. And then I run the same command, ls-l. As you can see, we have this new file alpha, and you can tell that the permissions have changed. We now have full permissions. We're able to read, write, and execute. So now we go ahead and execute our exploit on the server. So I'm going to do that and write alpha, hit enter. And we see we have a new shell. If you've noticed earlier, we were using a shell, this one, bash3. Now we have sh3. So here we can run who am I? And we see that we are the root user now, which is good because now that we are in, we're able to do whatever we like. We can create new files. We can, for instance, we can create a new directory. ls. We see that we have the directory here. I mean, we can delete stuff. We can delete the same directory. And, oh, sorry. Yeah. Basically, now we have full access to the server. And that is how a remote code execution is done. So that's it for our brief demo session. Just go back here. Yeah, so thank you for attending this session. If you have questions, feel free to type them in the chat or unmute yourself and ask. Thank you. Kangin, feel free to unmute yourself and ask, please.
You can unmute yourself now.
Thank you so much. Hi, Mary and everyone there.
Hey.
Thank you so much for your presentation. It was awesome. It was splendid. Can't even explain it, but allow me to go direct to my question. Sorry I joined the session late, but as I was trying to catch up through your config session part and terminal you are running, were you trying to access a local machine or through an IP or a website during pen test? Masking.
Sorry.
Masking.
Yeah.
During a demo presentation, were you trying to access a pen test to a local machine or a website?
Okay. So I had this machine on my VirtualBox. It's actually a very vulnerable machine. And from that point, I was able to scan it from my network because I had it running on my VirtualBox and I was on my local network, tried to scan to get the IP address of the system. And then from that point, I was able to exploit the open ports that were running on that virtual machine. So that's where I discovered the port 80, which is a web page. And from that point, I did an SQL injection on the web page, then gained access to the system.
So where you bypassed credentials is where you did the injection.
Yeah.
Okay. I would have loved to go to dive in more about injection. I'm more interested in that.
Okay.
So, and again, maybe in future, some of us we are in Windows, so Linux kidogo inatupiga chenga.
Oh, oh my. Okay, in that case, I think you can just have your VirtualBox or VMware running on your Windows machine. Try to install Kali Linux and just practice a few commands. There are actually great resources on the internet that can help you get started with Kali Linux.
I have so many VirtualBoxes, but to be honest, installing Kali Linux, hey, I'm not used to. Maybe your handles, Mary.
Oh yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn and I'm on Twitter. On LinkedIn, you can find me at Mary Campbell. That's my name.
Mary
and
Campbell.
On Twitter, you can reach out at Watiri. Yeah. Then Twitter is Watiri_bossbabe.
Perhaps you could write your Twitter handle in the chat.
Yeah, that will be better.
Okay.
Billy, have you finished with your question?
Yeah. Thank you so much. That was insightful.
Okay, thank you. Let me read the other ones. Somebody asked, Well, it's basically people telling you that the presentation was amazing. Thank you for the presentation. And then somebody said, very informative slides and demo, very beginner friendly. If you could share the configuration for the Black Panther terminal.
Okay. So,
No, it's okay. You answer.
Oh yeah, I wanted to say that for my terminal, I'm just running the XFCE terminal, and then they have settings where you can add in a background, whichever you like.
Okay, thank you. I think that's answered the question. Donna asked, hi, when changing the file permission of the exploit, you used another command instead of change mod. Is there a reason or is it preference? Also, please explain how changing of bash gets us to root.
Okay. So instead of using change mode, I used GCC because the exploit is a C file. And GCC is literally the command that helps us to compile and change permissions of a C file. So that's why I used that. And what was the other question?
Also, please explain how changing of bash gets us to root.
Okay. In that case, when we ran the exploit, it escalated our privileges. So we actually became root user because we ran the exploit file and escalated our privileges. Yeah.
Okay, I think that answers that. Can you kindly share the link to download the vulnerable VM machine? Can you do that?
Yeah, sure thing.
You've written your Twitter handle. Nima says, I'm using Kali on VMware, but it can't read the network adapter.
Really? Are you using, in your network settings, is it bridged or is it not? Or what kind of settings are, what are your network settings?
Well, Nima will have to come back and answer that. Kyuta said, amazing presentation, proud of you. Gichangai says, my question is for testing, what common checks do you look for? My question is for testing, what common checks do you look for company jobs in website? Okay, I'm not understanding that, but maybe.
Yeah, I also don't understand it so well. Perhaps they can provide more details.
Yeah, and then wait, there's something. Somebody asked, can the session be shared? Yes, it's actually recorded on YouTube. So you can just go to YouTube and write She Hacks and you should find the session there under live. You won't find it in videos, but you'll find it under lives. He said, that question that we didn't understand, he said, like the vulnerability or even systems, just mention a few.
Okay.
I
think a good starting point, like a check, if it's a network, you could start by scanning ports. If it's a website, you could look for inputs where a user interacts with the site, maybe like a form where they provide feedback or they actively interact with the site, and test it for vulnerabilities like cross-site scripting. Yeah, also when you have login pages, and if you're able to determine the database that application is running on, you could also try stuff like injection. Yeah, so I believe different types of attacks will have different checkpoints. Yeah.
Okay, and then
I hope that answers your question.
I hope so too. Sorry, I cut you off. Billy asked, how often do you organize this kind of session? We have these sessions on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Just keep up with our Twitter and you'll see us posting about them. Our Twitter or our Instagram. Nima said, I'm using NAT. When I use Bridge, I lose network completely.
Okay, that's weird. Because when you use Bridge, it's meant to use your Wi-Fi and like the same Wi-Fi you are on your local machine and use that on your virtual machine. But it could be a configuration issue. Maybe you could reach out and we could try to fix that.
Okay, thank you for that. Collins asked if I could add to the root and bash question by Donna. He's basically saying different users have different terminal shells as defined on. Yeah, what he said there. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay, yes. So that's what he said. And then he said, changing bash or shell doesn't get you to root, but executing the exploit she downloaded. Oh, Donna already saw it and she said, thank you. Okay. So this guy, Maina, said, thank you for the response. Trying to brute force phone passwords, best penetration attacks for it. Is that a question or a statement? I'm not sure. Derek said, I find that VMs from VanHub work better with VirtualBox. When using VMware, the boxes don't get IPs. Oh, Nima said that she's reaching out. She's me on Twitter and Insta and share her suggestions and best help her. But I don't see any more questions. Do you?
No, I don't think so. But I have shared the link to where you can download this, that vulnerable box. But I did notice something when I was installing it on my VirtualBox. The files that I downloaded were only running on VMware. So I kind of had to, I had to clone that disk and convert it into a VirtualBox format for it to run on VirtualBox. So in case you try to run it and you fix that issue, you can also reach out and I'll share the code.
Okay, I think if they have any more questions, you can reach out to Mary on her Twitter. She's posted it somewhere there in the chat. So let me post it again because I'm going to end the session in the next few minutes. So just quickly pick that up and you can just inbox her directly. Yeah, you have to open the DM. People really wanted to ask you a lot of questions. But I think that we can close the session now. I'd like to thank you so much for your session. As you can see in the chats, people actually responded really well to it. I hope you come back so that you can get into depth in the topic, because I guess there's so much more to discuss.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you guys for those who showed up and have stayed till now. Hope to see you in our next session. I'm not sure when it will be, but it's usually on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 7 to 8. Just keep a lookout on our Twitter and we will see you in the next one. Thanks again. Good night.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.